Hello and welcome to another Guardians of Wiltshire video. I'm your host Dewey, and this week I'm going to be showing you how I avoided lots of freehand. So I've bought a canned army over the last 6 months and it's got relatively big. And I didn't fancy doing all the freehand on the banners. Now, for a Christmas present to myself, I bought a 3D printer, a resin 3D printer to be precise, and I'm going to show you how I've put together the models and how I have avoided all that freehand by making banners of my own. Here we are then, 2 replacement Candish Horsemen boxes from Bristol Independent Gaming. These arrived with my Fangorn dice, before you ask what the dice box is. When first opening packages like this, check all the parts for miscasts and ensure that all the pieces are in the package. This video is definitely showing you that you should check what's in each set you receive. I've had the issue before with kits that have arrived many moons ago that I've only recently checked and they have missing parts or I have mislaid them, which can be a huge problem. However, as I will show you, having a 3D printer has been a great purchase to fix those missing gaps and parts. After checking everything, I take my clippers and trim off all the metal vent flash. You'll probably miss some, I tend to, and most of the time I catch it during painting, which is very frustrating in a batch paint. You may notice that I cut off all the grass strands that are attached to the feet. I do this on all my cover models, metal, plastic, resin. I find that it makes the bases far more customizable, and removing them gives me the ability to do that. Now, taking a simple triangular file, I smooth over the last bits of flash that are remaining on the model. I use my thumb to feel where the sharp corners still exist on the models, and therefore it means I can get all of the bits that are needed. So here is the moment that people will think I'm crazy. Picking up my clippers again, I go to town and taking off the back banners of the Candish Horsemen, but making sure I didn't remove the bows or arrows, whilst also not leaving the bows too thick where they were attached to the banners themselves. I did not want to paint freehand on 40 odd banners in this army. I did take a file to some of the pieces if they were especially sharp, and didn't necessarily worry about the back side of the bows or arrows, because I knew I'd be replacing the banners and they would cover line of sight to them. Now it was a case of assembling the horsemen. The right legs and arms. The first axe-wielding horseman was a simple reposition without cutting or twisting the metal, which I sometimes do with metal miniatures. I also use superglue gel. I get this from Poundland, and I find it is so much more useful than liquid superglue. It doesn't slide around, and it doesn't fall off the model, which is so useful when, especially with metal miniatures. With this second Candish Horseman, I intended him to be a third chieftain in my force, so I swapped where his hand sits within the sleeve to give him a different sense of movement. Finally, I positioned his arm going straight up to give him a more commanding pose. I used my clippers to snip the hand off and to make the back of the hand have a flat surface. After separating the hand and the arm, I used my file to get 2 clean surfaces ready for pinning. To keep the parts together, I used a 0.9mm tungsten drill bit so I can fit a 0.8mm brass rod into the holes. I find the little bit of gap between the two helps with smooth fits. I did drill into the sleeve a bit too far, and you can see that when it pops out the edge of the outer arm, but that's easily fixed with a file. The next step is to drill into the hand. Sometimes I push a little pin or the tip of the blade into where I'm going to pin so that I have a pilot hole and it stops me from jamming the drill bit into my hand as I did here when it slips off the piece. Using my super glue again, I quickly put this chieftain together, ready for green stuff. And you may have noticed that I put some black card down, so everything appears a bit better on camera, so I hope this helps you. Next is the joy of gap filling. This is the most boring part of the hobby for me, and I think a few others too. I generally use a mix of milliput and green stuff because I find that the milliput is too crumbly and the green stuff is too sticky, but I find the combination of the two makes the putty nice and smooth but it's easy to manipulate into the spaces. I also use a bit of Vaseline on my fingers and my tools so that I can easily work with the epoxy putty. Luckily I only have these 4 horsemen to do, seeing that I've done the other 11 riders and 2 chieftains and 8 chariot horses over the last week. I thought I'd get back into the video making scene once I'd started this army, as I'll be trying a few new things out with them, both modelling and painting. I roll my milliput green stuff mixture into a nice small sausage and then cut it with a knife. Then using silicone shapers, I push the putty into the gap, but still leaving some putty above and below the gaps to smooth it into the metal that's already there, and it makes it not stand out as much. There are some horsemen that have a mould gap in a strange spot between the tassel and the connection point, so I had to fill the gap first and then sculpt a bit of tassel to bridge the gap. Moving back to the crudely cut banners from the back of the horsemen, the leftover bits need to be removed, so I got out my rotary tool and some cutting bits, both cylindrical and spherical. After making sure the bit was securely within the rotary tool, I grabbed each model and carefully, with safety glasses on, as metal goes everywhere, took away chunks of metal that were left on the back of the riders. Using both the cylindrical and spherical bits, I can take away material and also ensure the cloaks don't look out of place. After swapping out my 0.9 drill bit for a 1.51, I drilled a hole about 1.5 to 2 cm deep into the lower back of the horseman for the base of the banner I've designed. Going to my hobby cupboard behind me, I grabbed my canned Tupperware box. In a future video I'll do a little tour of my hobby room once I've had a quick tidy. As I said before, I have some of these models already built and part painted, so I got out of the box some back banners I have already printed, because when I print out weapons or banners like this, I always print more than I need, just in case something goes wrong when printing, or snapping when cleaning them up. Like with models on a sprue, the prints need clipping and filing down the support points. You should be wearing a respirator when filing resin, because it's a pretty nasty material when it does form, and to get rid of the powder formed, I just grab a cheap makeup brush and sweep away the dust. Here is the final look at one of the banners I've designed and printed. This was made using Fusion 360. And I made 3 different variants of the banners, all with different wave patterns, so I had some different shapes across my army. The embossed dragon is a vector image I found online that suited the look I wanted for these banners. Can you imagine freehanding 40 banners both sides of this design? No thank you. I tried to keep the design similar to the original look of the canned banners, with what I think is a metallic bulb and at the top and a little piece jutting out from the base of the banner for attaching into the drilled hole at the back of the rider. As you can see, I got out the models I'd previously done to see how many of which banner design I had already attached to the models. Then from the leftover banners I selected the ones I wanted to use for the horsemen I was currently building. Once I was happy with the banners I was going to use, I simply used the super glue gel again to secure these banners in. That would be if the hole is the right size. So obviously when I was designing these I made a securing pin about 1.5mm in diameter or larger. I don't actually remember what the size is. But the 1.5 meter drill bits I have didn't make the hole large enough, so I had to go in with them and file down the edges of the pin so that it fit in the hole. I made sure to add some glue to the back of the helmet trim, just so there is another anchor point for the banners. Now, to distinguish the Candish chieftain from the rest of the horsemen, I designed a slightly more intricate banner for them. So in addition to the dragon that all the banners have, I added another piece of material off the top of the banner, just like the original Candish chieftain sculpts have. Along with the extra material, a few motifs were added to the banner. In the bottom two corners, some sweeping curves were placed as a bit of a border, and then within the extended parts of the banner, I added some motifs that were offset from the outer perimeter, resulting in a simple but effective bit of detail. Adding the STL file into Chitterbox, the 3D slicing software I use, I was clear that the banner would not be able to be printed well in the original orientation. So tilting the banner 45 degrees towards the banner pole so that the supports would have minimal impact if they weren't to detach nicely. This included adding 3 supports to the pole, 1 to the pin and base of the pole, and a further 2 to the base of the banner. I think this possibly could be too many supports, but the amount chosen means that the forces detaching each thin layer of resin wouldn't be enough to cause a failed print, as you'll soon see. After creating the prints I wanted with all their supports, I transferred the file over to my Elegoo Mars 2 Pro and set the printer off to do its magical work. Now, I don't like to get a print going just for a single piece if I can help it. It seems like a bit of a waste of time. So on this print you'll notice I have some extra Easterling pikes that should have printed. This is where my support game went a little wrong. I have printed some test ones in the past to fix broken pike building models, but obviously I had heavier supports attached, and this time I didn't. I definitely won't be forgetting what I need to use for future weapon prints. I'm not sure why, but whenever I see some YouTubers take prints out their printer, they don't seem to have a flex plate, and I don't know why. It's such an easy bit of kit to install. It's a magnet with a sticky side to stick to the build plate, and then a steel plate that you can take on and off as you please. It makes removing parts so easy. Taking my mess of a print, I brought it to my easy use tray and clipped off the banner needed. I gave it a quick scrub in water as I used water washable resin from Elegoo. No need for more chemicals, and then give it a dry with a paper towel. All that needs doing now is placing it into my Elegoo Mercury curing station. It has some strips of UV bulbs within it and a super shiny surface all the way around with a solar panel wood turntable at the bottom. Once I'm done with my resin cleaning station, I pop it back into my project tire. I have no idea what else to call it. Here are a few extra parts I've designed and printed for this army. Firstly, this is my chariot for my Candish king. It was bought in a trade group on Facebook and it wasn't in the best state when it arrived, having to be stripped of paint, plus it was missing one of the banners and a quiver that attached to the side of the chariot. The quivers that attach to the chariots have an extra part that is hard to describe, and to design them would have taken me a while, so instead I went for a curve similar to a Candish axe. I would eventually paint that metallic for a bit more menacing look. In keeping with the dragon theme, these chariot banners were made bigger and encompass the same dragon emblem. The final parts I printed from a canned army are the wheels of the chariots. Again, I got one of these chariots from the same second-hand lot, but when stripping the models of paint and more specifically superglue, I couldn't release one of the wheels as it would be easier to paint apart. Now these wheels I designed were a bit thicker and a touch more detail. This included a metallic rim and a wall of chariot-like spikes coming out the centre of the wheel. The advantage of printing these wheels was the fact that I didn't have to attempt to strip paint out of all the tiny crevices between the spokes, and I didn't have to clean up massive amounts of vent flash on the back side of the wheels. There we are then. There are my currently 4 Candish horsemen with 3D printed banners, and I've shown you a few other bits and pieces that I've included in the army. So join me in a future video where I'll show you how I've painted all of these. At the current point I've put kind of their main base colour on, the rest of the ones that are built. So I really hope you've enjoyed this video. I'm going to try and keep to these style of videos going forward. They just seem a bit easier to make, for me anyway. If you've really liked what I've done, please like Guardians of Wiltshire on Facebook, follow me on Instagram. We have a Discord as well that's been going really well since the first lockdown in the UK. It's really active. We have a Sunday hobby hangout every week on the voice and video channel. There's loads of good guys on there providing list advice, painting advice. We've got loads of really good painters on there, so come over and join us. There'll be a link in the description below. So if you've liked this style of video, please let me know, and if you want to see me try anything else, I plan on building some terrain, doing more videos like this, please let me know. I'd love to know your thoughts. So that's the end of the video, and we'll see you soon.